The next section here is on party realignment. And party realignment is when the balance of power between a country's political parties changes greatly. So, for example, Peyton Manning de-aligned from the Colts and realigned with the Broncos. So when he left the Colts, he de-aligned. When he joined the Broncos, he realigned. When voters become apathetic or they become more independent, they de-align with parties. But when they tune back in or they switch parties, they realign. Now, party realignment is very rare, but in some cases, the major party can disappear completely. But what usually happens is that support shifts between two existing parties, say Republicans to Democrats or Democrats to Republicans. And this usually occurs when a very important issue cuts across party divisions and divides the parties. So realignment typically happens in this way. First, we have a nationwide crisis event. For example, let's say the Great Depression of the 1930s. As a response, parties respond to the crisis and they campaign on new issues that address that crisis event. So it might be the New Deal policies that they campaign for. As a response, voters change their long-standing allegiances in light of their new reality. So because this crisis put them in a dire situation, they saw the benefit of New Deal policies. And then finally, one party becomes dominant and controls the House, Senate, and the presidency for years. So, with the Great Depression, we have New Deal policies which unite urban workers, African Americans, and Jews who had traditionally been Republicans. And they switched to the Democratic side. And as a result, the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency for nearly 60 years. You can see in this graph, we start at 1931. And on the top, we have the majority party in the Senate. In the middle, the majority party in the White House. And in the bottom, the majority party in the House of Representatives. And you can see very obviously that the Democrats, after the Great Depression, hold power almost until 2000. We've also had regional realignment. So you can see in 1932, the southern United States is voting completely Democratic. And they had for many, many years because Southern Democrats were opposed to outlawing slavery. And so that was widely supported in the South for that main issue, regardless of the fact that Southerners didn't always agree with Democratic policy. Now, as the years go on, we have drastic realignment in the South. You can see the South become more and more red over time. And LBJ said in 1964, after the signing of the Civil Rights Act, "I think we have just delivered the South to the Republican Party for a long time to come." And he was absolutely true, because the South had been united around the Democrats because of the issue of civil rights and slavery. And when they go the other way, they abandon the Democrats because they don't really have anything that they would support them for anymore. So you can see in 1968, 1972, the South goes completely red. It's a little bit different in 1976. In 1976, Jimmy Carter, a Southern governor, gave Democrats a very short-lived comeback. 1976 is going to be the last year that Democrats have a strong hold on electoral votes in the South. You can see for the next many years, the South continues to vote red. And you can see that's still true up through 2012 and even today. So this was a question found on the AP exam in 2009. And it said, one reason for the persistence of a two-party system in the U.S. is A, the lack of divisive issues in U.S. politics, B, the separation of powers, C, the single-member district electoral system, D, the lack of a strong labor movement, and E, low voter turnout in most elections. And on the 2009 AP exam, 57% of the nation gets this question wrong. Your answer is the single-member electoral district system. Now, this just kind of demonstrates how this single prize leads to a two-party system. So we have all these little men on the bottom, and they have a prize that's very hard to attain. And when there's only a single prize, it's very difficult to win it. So, the most popular person wins the right to be a representative for this single-member district. However, these little guys can't quite jump high enough to get to the prize, so they need to buddy up. Should we team up? Each colored triangle is going to be a political party with a unique ideology. So you can see here we have 6 political parties. And the candidate with the most votes gets a seat in the House of Representatives. However, you can see at this point, no one is able to reach the House of Representatives or the prize. So blue is the most popular, looks like we're going to win, but they say, hold on, red says, hold on, we're not done yet. Yellow and orange can join us and we can beat blue. So, even though blue had been the most popular, political parties of similar ideologies are going to pair up and they're going to reach this prize. Now, in our system, second place is first loser. So, what do they have to do next time to win? Well, this guy, he's unwilling to compromise his ideology, even if he knows he's never going to win. This is going to be a third-party candidate that tries to influence policy, but is never going to win political office. Now, although there are more than 2 parties in the U.S., we know this from our political party poster project, we call our system a two-party system because the next president is either going to be a Democrat or a Republican. Any country that uses a single-member district with plurality elections where the most popular person wins is typically only going to have 2 parties. There's no second, third place in this sort of system. And so to get a powerful and lasting third party, it would be essential to change the way our elections are held. Now, this is how they do it in some countries in Europe. They use a proportional representation system. So instead of voting for individual people, you vote for parties that represent your ideology. Then the percentage of the vote received for each party determines the percentage of the seats that they win in the national legislature. So finishing in this case with 34% of the vote doesn't make you a loser, it makes you 34% a winner. So even the tiniest parties win a position. These systems tend to feature more parties because voters aren't always throwing away their vote, which we talk about with third parties in the United States, because if you vote for a third party in the United States, it's really not going to have a huge outcome on the election. It's still very unlikely that that party is going to win. However, in this proportional representation system, the red party gets, say, 52 members out of a 100-member legislature, and the blue party gets 34 members of those 100. Political parties have three main jobs. First, they have to recruit candidates. They have to find quality candidates to run for political office. Once they've recruited their candidates, they're going to nominate their candidates. This happens through primaries and caucuses, and then eventually party conventions. We'll talk more about that sort of process when we look at elections in Chapter 10. And then they're going to help candidates win elections. So they're going to help fund campaigns, they're going to help organize rallies, and so on and so forth to make sure that their candidate gets the most votes possible. Now, in the United States, our national parties and our state parties kind of have completely different jobs and operate pretty independently of one another. But the National Party has a few main jobs. First, they are going to call the National Party Convention, where they'll nominate the candidate for president. That's where all of these GIFs are from our last election. On the bottom, you can see some delegates at the Republican National Convention, and on the bottom right, you can see some delegates from the Democratic National Convention. The national parties are also going to represent the party in the media. Oftentimes there will be interviews with the head of the party, and so on and so forth. And then finally, they're going to raise money to fund campaigns. Now, prior to 1900, state parties were party machines. They often ran up the cost of government and systematically instituted voter fraud. And we talked about that a little bit when we talked about voter participation or political participation. Now, I used the term party machine a little bit earlier in this lecture. And a party machine is a political organization that recruits members through tangible incentives. So that could be money, it could be jobs, it could be political favors, so on and so forth. Now, post-1890, we implement stricter voting laws. That includes the adoption of the Australian ballot. And then, in 1939, we passed the Hatch Act. And the Hatch Act made it illegal for federal civil service employees to take an active part in the management of political campaigns, soliciting funds for campaigns, counting ballots, so on and so forth. Basically, they wanted to take the peoples whose jobs were on the line in elections and completely remove them from that sort of process to cut down on corruption. Now, in recent years, state parties have really struggled to redefine their role in political life. And state parties and their jobs and what they do and how active they are vary from state to state. But a new style machine emerges, and these political organizations have a strong interest in the issues, especially at the national level. So they use campaign funds still to build loyalty to the party, but they're thinking more about the issues. So think party platforms. You guys looked at party platforms for your project, and basically that talks about a whole bunch of different ideas and how that party feels about them, and that is going to unite a group of people that share similar beliefs. They support that party platform. This is true both at the national party level as well as the state party level today. Now, the opposite of a party machine is an ideological party. This is similar to the New Style machine, where we focus more on the issues. These parties are values-focused, issue-focused. They're contentious, meaning the decisions they take, the statements they make can be controversial, and they're factionalized, meaning they're divided into little subgroups. There are independent third parties. You guys looked at a number of them, whether it be the Green Party or the Libertarian Party. But there are also factions or divisions within the Democratic and Republican parties. For example, the Tea Party is not a third party in its own right. It's just a faction or a subgroup inside the Republican Big Tent. So essentially, not all Republicans and not all Democrats agree on everything. And they don't agree on everything in their party's platform. And as a result, we have these subdivisions that happen within our two-party system. We have many different candidates with many different ideas. For example, if you have a conservative candidate or a Republican candidate, they may be very conservative, but another Republican candidate could be more centrist. Now, third parties struggle to gain electoral votes in the United States, but they are beneficial in that they're like bumblebees. They sting once, they may not last long, but while they're alive, they're going to fly about and they're going to pollinate new ideas. And some of those new ideas are going to be picked up by major parties. And that's how third parties can really have an influence in a two-party system. Now, there are different types of third parties. First, there's the ideological parties, and these parties are most likely to endure or to last for a long time. Libertarian and Green parties are both examples of ideological third parties. These are parties that profess a comprehensive view of American society and government that's radically different from that of an established political party, like the Republicans or like the Democrats. Another example of one of these would be the Socialist Party. Next, we have economic protest parties. And these are parties, usually in a certain region, that protest against depressed economic conditions. When the conditions improve, these parties tend to disappear. The issue that they were focused on is gone now, so they disappear. Now, one-issue parties are parties that seek a single policy change. Usually, it's revealed by their name. So, in my classroom, there's a poster on the Pirate Party. The Pirate Party is basically focused on net neutrality and that sort of thing. And so, they're focused on a single issue. They don't have a ton of ideas about different societal issues, about how the economy should be run and so forth. Another example is the Prohibition Party. The Prohibition Party's only initiative was to outlaw drinking. And then we have factional parties. And those are parties that are created by a split in a major party, usually over identity or philosophy of a presidential candidate. So they might not like their party's candidate. For example, the Reform Party emerged in 1992, and Ross Perot ran as president, and as a third party member, he receives 19% of the 1992 popular vote, which is huge for a third party candidate in America's two-party system. Now, de-alignment is a trend or process where a large portion of the electorate abandons its previous affiliation without developing a new one to replace it. So, Manning leaves the Colts and he doesn't immediately go to the Broncos. Would be an example of de-alignment. Okay? Now, he does realign with the Broncos. However, this would be similar to going free agent, right? To become independent and not realign with another political party. So in this graph, do you see de-alignment? You can see the number of Democrats is decreasing, and the number of Republicans dips, while the number of independents grows, with 38% of the American electorate identifying as independent. Now today, less people are identifying with political parties, and this increases ticket splitting or voting for candidates of different political affiliations on the same ballot. Now, most independents express partisan leanings, meaning I lean Democrat or I lean Republican. Only 6% of independents declined to lean in either direction. However, most independents did not speak kindly of the party members. So they may lean Democratic, but they don't speak kindly of Democrats. Now these charts show increasing political polarization. This is the distribution of Democrats and Republicans on a 10-item scale of political values. You can see in 1994, our median is pretty close together. Most people are pretty centrist. However, in the next 10 years, we split up a little bit, and by 2014, 20 years after the original image here, we have tons of space between the median of the Democratic Party and the median of the Republican Party, meaning more people are consistently liberal or consistently conservative. Now, polarization is this division in two sharply contrasting groups or sets of opinions and beliefs. Now, as polarization increases, so does partisanship. And partisanship is the tendency to support a particular group or viewpoint over another. In politics, it's the tendency to support one's own political party over the others. So this can be seen in voters, in how they identify and how they vote. Do Democrats consistently vote Democratic and vice versa? And it can be seen through the actions and relationships in Congress. So this Business Insider video shows you how party polarization and party partisanship has increased over time. Next, we have a video here on President Ronald Reagan and the sort of conservative realignment that happens under his presidency, though minor, still there. A number of questions here. What was unique about the political style of Ronald Reagan? What impact did his presidency have on the Republican and Democratic parties? And do any current political figures have Reagan's gift of communication? So you can go through, watch that video, and answer those questions. So that's going to be everything for political parties. Again, if you have any questions, need any clarification on anything, certainly stop in and check with me. Thanks.